It's now or never. These players have had just enough time.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Whether you're watching me on YouTube or wherever you're downloading your podcast, we are free. I cannot express to you enough how much I appreciate your support. You can show your appreciation. It's really easy. If you're watching on YouTube, become a subscriber. Hit that subscribe button. And by all means, please, please, please hit that thumbs up. It sets us apart from everyone else. And we come at you 5 times a week. Hit that bell notification button. You don't miss an episode. One of the labels that fans and others, even some in the media, they like to hang. They like to hang this around a player's neck. It's a term called bust. So whether it's meant to be a pejorative, or they're just looking to use in one word, just to be brutally blunt, honest. Calling someone a bust because they did not meet your, and I hate this word, your expectation level. Look, that type of label, that should only come from someone who has some skin and blood in the game. In other words, former players, or the player's coach. I don't think fans have earned the right to label a college football player a bust. And look, I'll be honest, I'm guilty of it in the past. I've gotten caught up in some trash talking, but professionally, no, that's not my style. Look, there's just too many variables involved. There's coaching changes, injuries, depth chart. We're talking about that word expectation, star rankings. That's right there is where it kind of sets the table for these players, for these high school. Some of you guys like to use the word kids. I call them young men. When you're setting them up, you're setting them up to fail. You're not setting them up to succeed. So I guess it begs the question: if you're looking at the rundown for this show, which veterans on USC's roster needs to step up in 2023? Or let's talk about redshirt sophomore, that's third-year player Mason Murphy, redshirt junior, fourth-year player Andrew Malek, redshirt junior Andres DeWork, redshirt senior Gino Quinones, redshirt senior Cooper Lovelace. Is it their time? Do they have to seize the moment this year? Because these are the vets who, essentially they arrived at USC before Lincoln Riley kind of took over. And if you've been paying attention, it's hard not to. In these last 2 years, there's been a lot of roster turnover. So these are the guys that Lincoln Riley and his staff have found a value in, and they want them around. But at a certain point, your window keeps that window's closing, and you kind of gotta make your mark. Otherwise, the recruits that are coming in behind you, these are the guys who this staff recruited. And it becomes now of how much time do you invest in someone who's been around the program 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and starting investing that time into the future. So if those guys on the offensive line that I just mentioned, if they're not part of the 2 deep this year, does that mean it's time to move on? I mean, let's not forget, the offensive line is the toughest position group to not only recruit, but to kind of forecast and develop. Mason Murphy and Gino, they played a lot in 2022. But you also kind of got the sense, and it felt like, Mason Murphy was getting passed up at the end of the year. For whatever reason, we can explore that maybe another episode. another show. But at the end of the year, other guys were playing ahead of him. And let me remind everybody, there's some talented freshmen coming in. At running back, is Darwin Barlow going to get enough carries this year? You've got Austin Jones. They brought in Marshawn Lloyd. And then is there anyone at their in the wide receiver room that kind of deserves to be put under that microscope? I don't believe there is. When you take into consideration injuries and, maybe what their rankings were coming in, coaching changes. Miller Moss certainly doesn't belong in this conversation. Next year, though, different story. And I'm going to leave the tight end room alone, just because of injuries. Period. They don't deserve to be even discussed in the bust room. What about defensively? Linebacker, Rajon Davis. He came in highly rated, and remember, he flipped from LSU back to USC. Is this his year, or does he fall into the I'm not going to use the term bust, but did not develop category? Yeah, I'm going to walk that line. And again, that's another issue. How much is on the player, and how much of that falls on the coaching? Sia Wright, he was another one of those recruiting battle wins for USC. Is he going to be Dante Williams brought this up going into last year. Is he, and I'm paraphrasing, so is he a full-time football player with NFL aspirations, or, is he going to be a future Hollywood superstar? By the way, I need to ask him if he's on strike right now. So find out. And then, if you want to talk about the other players in the secondary, Zamarian Gordon, Prophet Brown, Anthony Beavers. Those are names that don't get mentioned by me often. They're all 3-year guys. Is that trend with me not mentioning their names, is that going to continue? And then, look, I know everyone's like, Mark, when are you going to get to it? Well, the elephant in the room, saving the best for last, Corey Foreman. He has to be the one guy to step up among the veterans, right? Has to be. You hate to use the B word. You really do. Because he still has 2 more years of eligibility. But when you take everything into consideration, his ranking coming out of high school, the expectation level that everybody has, including coaching staff, man, you want it to happen. You want it to happen this year for Corey. Everyone's rooting for him. I know I am. I don't know anybody who's rooting against him. But by far, he has the most pressure of all the veterans returning this year, without a doubt. I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's a lot of high expectations, and I hate that word, but, just to kind of, for conversation's sake, it's probably why his name wasn't on the list for Thursday's media day. Of all the other players and coaches who are going to be there, Corey Foreman's name was not on the list. We'll get a chance to talk to him, though, during fall camp. That I can guarantee. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster, and they do it for free. As easy it is to use LinkedIn to find a job, it's also just as easy to create a free job posting over there on LinkedIn. Once you add your job listing, you can then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, and that's going to spread the word that you are hiring. LinkedIn provides you simple tools like screening questions, and that's going to make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and the right experiences so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and, most importantly, hire. Recruiting the right person for your team means a better product. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs are going to help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Now, I meant to talk about this at the top of the show, but it wouldn't have sounded right based on the way I introduced the show. Um, Thoughts and prayers for Bronny James. Uh, if you haven't heard by now, his heart stopped during a USC workout on the basketball court at Galen Center Monday. But just so you know, he is resting comfortably. He's out of ICU, and everybody thinks everything's going to be okay. But this is the second year in a row this has happened. It happened with Vince Uwachukwu last year. It's happened again. Anyways, all summer. So, real quick, again, everyone, thoughts and prayers. Bronny James, we hope everything is going to be fine for the young man. We look forward to him on the basketball court this year with USC. Let's get back to talking about this show and who's going to be the most improved players on the roster this year, 2023. All summer, I've talked about the transfer portal, particularly all three levels of the guys that came in on defense. D-line, you had Bear Alexander, Jack Sullivan, Keon Barrs, and Anthony Lucas. Linebacker, Mason Cobb came along. In the secondary, you have Christian Roland Wallace and Traquan Fagans in the secondary. And Eddie Chapliski over there, special teams. Offensively, transfer portal, just a reminder, Michael Tarquin, Jarrett Kingston, Emmanuel Pregnon on the offensive line. Wide receiver, Dorian Singer. Running back, Marshawn Lloyd. Every one of those names that I just rattled off, they anticipate playing significant, big roles this season. They played big roles at their former places. They didn't come to USC for less playing time. So, which guys who played big roles, played a lot of minutes for USC in 2022? I'm not talking about the guys who transferred. I'm talking about the guys who were already on the roster. Of those guys, who's going to be the most improved? So they can maintain playing time. Keep similar playing minutes that they had in last year. Let's start on the I'll just start with the offensive line. I mentioned Mason Murphy and Gino Quinones in the first segment. I'm just wondering, is this going to be a numbers game, or a numbers crunch for these guys? Lots of interior offensive linemen, even though Mason Murphy's a tackle. They brought in two guys who are slotted to play inside. One of them actually played tackle at Washington State, Jarrett Kingston. And then they also brought in Michael Tarquin, a tackle. So fall camp is going to tell the story. And I guess where I'm going with this, I'm not sure either one is going to play as much in 23 as they did last year. I'm referring to Mason Murphy and Gino Quinones. That doesn't mean that they haven't improved. I just don't know if you're going to see them on the field enough to see how recognizable it is. If they are, that means, they improved significantly, and they've got the transfers playing behind them. Look, if we're going to talk about quarterback, Miller Moss is the only quarterback I want to see playing in 2023. that's not named Caleb Williams. But that, and I'm referring to, and that's only in the second half of the games when Caleb is resting. In fact, if Miller Moss is not in the first two games, San Jose State and Nevada, I need a good reason why. The other position group on offense is at wide receiver. Again, 3-year players or more. You've got Kyron Hudson, Michael Jackson III, Brendan Rice, Mario Williams, Taj Washington. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk about the transfers who came last year. I kind of have to with this room because Kyle Ford and Gary Bryant, yeah, well, one is a Bruin, one is a Duck. Oof. Yeah. Anyways, out of that wide receiver group, who is going to be the most improved? Who's going to bump up their playing time? Let's pull Mario Williams and Taj Washington out of there. I think those guys are going to see similar minutes to what they saw last year. So now let's narrow it down. Kyron Hudson, Michael Jackson III, Brendan Rice. I think everybody anticipates Brendan getting the first crack at it. I'm going Michael Jackson III. I'm already on record. You know, I said it a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I think he might even be the front runner on offense to be the most improved player. He might be a starter against San Jose State. Remember, this segment, I said, who's going to be the most improved players? The reason why those other wide receivers are probably already closer to their ceilings. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball. On defense, again, starting the trenches, guys who played a lot. Well, you had redshirt senior Dejon Benton. You had junior Corey Foreman, although he was rush end last year. Redshirt senior Tyrone Taleni. Redshirt senior Stanley Taufo. And then I'm not sure what year you actually categorize Solomon Tuliaupupu Solo. I'll just call him extra year. I hate using the word COVID year. So extra year Solo. And I think he might even be eligible for another year. I don't know. I can find out though. He might be eligible for another year. Don't be surprised if he's back in 2024. But again, this is another numbers game. Defensive line. I talked about it, all those guys that came over through the transfer portal. So, Tyrone Taleni was second on the team in sacks last year with 5.5 behind Tuli Tuiapulotu's 13.5. I went all in with Tyrone, but that was before the transfer portal purged, vomited a whole bunch of guys that are going to play this year. And I keep hearing that Solo is killing it. You know, I saw a little bit during the spring camp. So we just need to see we need to see him in the game. So coach, put him in. Let's see Solo make the complete transition from linebacker to defensive end. I've actually seen some behind the scenes footage. Shh, don't tell anybody. He's beating guys on that film that are going to be starters this year on the offensive line. So Solo will definitely be in the most improved category by far. And it's going to be interesting to see how much playing time Tyrone gets this year. I still think he's going to get a lot of playing time, but he's not going to be counted on to play as much as he did last year. And that might make him even more effective. Look, will Corey Foreman get any? And is he going to get any playing time? With hand in the dirt, playing defensive end. And if he does become that guy, what does that mean overall for the defense? Because now you've got guys who everyone is thinking, well, you know what? They brought these guys in because they just other guys who are already on the roster, they've seen enough. Fall camp is going to say a lot for Corey Foreman. Who's going to make the bigger leap at linebacker? Again, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about transfers, but for argument's sake, and on defense, there's just way too much turnover. I had to. So between Eric Gentry and Rajon Davis, who's going to be more improved? We didn't see a lot of Rajon, so if he's on the field and he's getting significant playing time, that means he's improved. Eric Gentry, he's going to play more because he's a projected starter. Now, when we move to the safety position, I'm taking Kalen Bullock out of the equation from everybody. Okay, who among the safeties will be the most improved? Guys who played a lot last year. Those names include Max Williams, Bryson Shaw, Jalen Smith. All of those guys played with injuries last year at certain points. And let's not also forget that Max Williams is a two-time ACL recovery guy. Out of the safety group, I'm going to go with Shaw, if he's healthy, as the most improved. He's been with Alex Grinch the longest. He better know the system better than anybody. And they need somebody in the box to be that guy, to complement Kalen Bullock. At cornerback, look, if he believes, and I really do think it's all mental, if Damani Jackson believes that his knee is completely recovered, he's going to be the most improved guy among the cornerbacks. But there's literally like room for 2 or 3 guys here. And the more the merrier, because that means that's just more guys that Dante Williams is going to be sending to the NFL. Here's the thing. The bar was so low to meet this year on defense. There's going to be multiple most improved players, most improved guys on the defensive side of the ball. There's just nowhere to go but up. All right, in this segment, we're going to talk about who has an easy schedule or who has a difficult schedule. I'm going to put this picture up here for everybody to kind of digest why I go over this. As you can see, and this is via Pro Football Focus, PFF, one of my favorite publications. You can see that USC has been put on having the 7th easiest schedule in the country. Meanwhile, USC has 4 top 15 teams on their schedule. Preseason. Utah, Notre Dame, Washington, Oregon. How is that on anybody's easy category? Please, someone, explain this to me. Look at who has the toughest schedule, according to PFF. Little USC, that school that's over there in Columbia, South Carolina. Apparently, they have the toughest schedule in the country because they play Georgia. And they're also going to get credit for playing Jacksonville State and Furman, who respectively went 9-2 and 10-3 last year. So those games, apparently, they weigh just as much as USC playing an 11-2 Washington or a 10-4 Utah. Makes total sense, right? You know who's not on either one of those lists that you're looking at there? The back-to-back champion Georgia Bulldogs. And that's because they have one top 15 team on their schedule. And I believe that's probably Tennessee. And it's way down the road on their schedule. This is Georgia's schedule. UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina. University of Alabama, Birmingham. Auburn, at Auburn. That's their first road game. Then they're home again, Kentucky. Then they go on the road at Vanderbilt. Oh, then they have a bye week. Then they go play Florida, between the hedges, Jacksonville. And then they host Missouri. And then they host Ole Miss. Oh, and then they end up on the road at Tennessee, at Georgia Tech. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 road games, 1 neutral site, Jacksonville. That is what you call Cupcake City. It's an embarrassment. Look, I get it. San Jose State and Nevada, it's not a murderer's row. Notre Dame, okay, that's USC's out of conference schedule. But it's a lot better than UT Martin, Ball State, Alabama, Birmingham, Georgia Tech. And then if you really want to compare conference schedules, you tell me. Is theirs tougher than USC's? Look, I've never been a fan of PFF. I'm going to get that out of everybody's face. Get that out of my face. And I'm not a fan only because they use these weird formulas to come up with their grade their best or whatever player list. You don't really know what goes into it. But this list that they put out was pretty straightforward. Wins, losses from the teams in 2022. And that's another example of why USC is getting the hell out of Dodge. They're out of the Pac-12 conference. Because of perception. Stuff like that. USC has to work twice as hard to change people's minds. Even when they're like at the top of the mountain. They have to prove they belong there because of teams that they played in the Pac-12 that don't get the respect that maybe they do deserve, but they don't receive. It's not a level playing field. It's just the way it is. You've always heard East Coast bias. ESPN, they suck on the teat of the Southeastern Conference. Well, there's some truth to that. There's also a lot of truth that there's just way too many schools from the Pac-12 that are an anchor around USC's necks. Look, I get it. It's just another dumb off-season list. But can we at least try and keep it real? Make these off-season lists sort of, realistic? Worthy of wanting to put your name on PFF? Look, everyone, we're one day closer to USC fall camp. And I'm going to be meeting with the assistant coaching staff and the players on Thursdays. You everyday listeners and viewers already know that because I've talked about that. So you'll remember when I said that on yesterday's show. So make sure, everybody, you come back for another episode of Locked On USC tomorrow. And then when you're done making this episode of Locked On USC today, head on over to wearec.com. So until I see everybody back here, you know what to do.